Since we've already looked into the power of Richard, we've gotten some baseline on how strong he is. Knowing that the Watterson family is hated by most of Elmore,
No! The people of Elmore might be haters, but they're our haters. They're like an old pair of underwear. Sure, there's not much support there, and sure, they sometimes leave us hanging in the wind. But there's something we're familiar with, and I, for one, will not have some big corporation forcing me to change my underwear! Yeah!
I think I have an idea why. Let's start off by looking at Nicole first, which will give us some insight into their children. Nicole mainly interacts with Elmore, and there's a reason for that too, to protect the world from the power of her husband. Since Richard can't control his power and could rip the universe apart at any time, Nicole, who has better control over her power, interacts with the outside world. Nicole is a champion of martial arts, and her strength mainly comes from her skill in karate. While Richard is like the earth, Nicole is more like water. Her strength comes from her speed and agility, not just raw strength like Richard. Nicole has been seen many times protecting her family from danger through her martial arts skill, but just like Richard, she barely used a fraction of her power in these situations. Unlike Richard, who we couldn't tell what his maximum power was, this isn't the case for Nicole. No mere mortal would dare take up Richard Watterson as a rival. However, for Nicole Watterson, the yin to Richard's yang, there is a rival, and gauging the impact that their fight has on the environment, we can figure out the lower bound for Nicole's strength, which will then help us find the strength of their children. Masami Yoshida's mother is the great enemy of Nicole Watterson. After training deep in the mountains to hone their martial arts skills, the two had a strong divide during their competition, breaking their everlasting friendship into pieces. Years later, after Nicole lay dormant in Elmore, Yuki, the mother of Masami, came back begging for revenge. With Nicole having no option but to defend her and her family's honor, the two rivals fought it out, and Nicole's unsharpened skills are put to the test.
Impossible! How?
Let's take this fight step by step and first take a look at the ending scene where the two reconcile their differences and must save their children. We see the pair break a steel beam with their hands, and the equation for the tensile strength of an object is S equals P divided by A, where S is the tensile strength, P is the force, and A is the cross-sectional area of the object. Rearranging the equation to be P equals A times S, we can figure out how much force Nicole uses and thus figure out a sort of lower bound for her force strength. The tensile strength for structural steel is around 550 megapascals. We can assume that the steel beam they are breaking is the I-beam, which is most commonly used in construction of buildings, and taking the dimensions from the now gone Bethelheim Steel Company, the cross-sectional area of this beam is around 1.8 meters squared. Multiplying these values out, we have a force that both of them use together of around 990 megapascals. We can convert this to newtons so we can accurately keep our units in check. 10 raised to the 6th newtons is 1 megapascal, so if we multiply 990 by 10 raised to the 6th, that's how many newtons Nicole uses. And if we expand this, it's around 990 million newtons. But this is both of them, and since they are of almost equal strength, with Nicole being stronger, we can divide this by 2 to get around 495,000 newtons. Now that we know the minimum ceiling of Nicole's strength, next we can figure out her speed, which is around very fast. But let's get a number for this. We know Nicole is moving very fast. She produces a blur while moving, and since a high school gym is around 84 feet in total, or 26 meters, and the two meet in the middle, we can guess that Nicole travels a maximum of 13 meters. But we know this isn't the case since she doesn't start at the end of the gym, but rather starts a little bit above halfway from the midpoint of the court. So we can guess that Nicole travels around 7.5 meters total on the safe end. She does this in around 0.08 seconds, which puts her speed, if we assume she's traveling at constant speed, to around 94 meters a second, which is around 1/3 the speed of sound. The blur they're producing isn't really from Nicole's speed, but from the energy she emits as she's literally heating up the air around her and turning it into plasma. To get to air like this, you need a temperature of around 55,000 degrees Kelvin. And if they were at room temperature, which is around 293 Kelvin, through the equation Q equals mc delta T, we can approximate how much energy Nicole uses. The mass of the air around her is about 0.03 kilograms for 1 cubic foot of air. Nicole is around 5'11", so the amount of air around her should be around 0.18 kilograms for the total air around Nicole. Multiplying out all the values with the heat capacity of air being around 700 joules and the change in temperature being 54,707 Kelvin, we see Nicole is emitting around 6.9 million joules of energy. Finally, getting an approximate value for Nicole's strength, she can also tank a miniature lightning bolt, taking minimal damage and still being able to put up a fight, putting her endurance at very high, or being able to absorb at most 1 billion joules of energy. After looking at the upper bound of Nicole's strength, we can tell that the two parents are practically supreme. Through the work of Mendel and his peas, we can use a genetic cross to figure out the genes of their children. Since no one in Elmore even comes close to the power of Nicole and Richard, I'm going to make a bold claim and state that the power gene, which is responsible for their strength, speed, and endurance, is a recessive gene. Thus, being a recessive gene, we know that both parents must have a PP gene. Crossing the two PPs, we get that each child must also have a PP, besides Darwin. Since Gumball and Anais must also have PPs, their power will also be similar to their parents, as they both have the double recessive gene for power, and should in turn be able to match, if not surpass, the strength of their parents. Just to solidify this claim, let's take a look at Anais, whose kicks can shake pillars. Instead of focusing on the strength of Anais, which we already know is similar to that of Nicole and Richard, let's take a look at her IQ, which sticks out to me the most. Anais may be one of the strongest Wattersons because she has what most of the other Wattersons don't have, a very high IQ. The equation to calculate an IQ score is mental age divided by chronological age times 100. At just 0 years old and just being born and coming back from the hospital, Anais is able to read and write as well as formulate and grasp basic ideas and concepts. This should put Anais at around the concrete operational stage of Piaget's stage of cognitive development, and further solidifying this idea is that most children learn to read and write at around 7 years old, which is consistent with the Piaget's concrete operational stage of cognitive development. If we assume Anais to be at least 1, so that we don't break the IQ equation and take Anais to be infinitely smart, we can say Anais's mental age is 7, and divided by her chronological age 1, we get 7, and multiplied by 100 gives Anais an IQ score of 700 at an age of 1 year old. And for comparison, Einstein had an IQ of just 160. This puts Anais at around too many zeros for me to comprehend 1 percentile of IQ scores. Finally, let's take a look at both Gumball and Darwin, the tag team duo of the series. I never found anything too formidable about Darwin, despite his lack of stomach, but Darwin does have some key characteristics, even if he doesn't have a peepee. Darwin defeated evolution and was able to by himself evolve legs, which most fish these days can't even dream of doing, which should put Darwin at least up there in terms of amazingness. Gumball, on the other hand, does have the PP gene, and I've seen him go Super Saiyan before, which should again give Gumball a formidable amount of strength comparable to Nicole and Richard, and maybe even Goku. Gumball also has a split personality as well, which he is aware of, which also puts him at least in the very smartish percentile. Gumball may not have done any amazing feats in the show, and we have seen him get pounded by many of the other characters of the show, but the genes he has from his parents is what exactly keeps him in the game. As someone with PP genes, Gumball may be the match for Goku. The Watterson family is full of amazing characters who defy the laws of physics and govern the Elmore universe itself through their mere existence. The two parents, Nicole and Richard, have strength insurmountable, with Richard's upper level still being unknown. The two biological children of Nicole and Richard both have the recessive double PP gene and have yet to reach their full potential, with Anais an IQ of 700 on the low end and Gumball hiding his true power until he deems the time necessary, just barely showing off 1% of his Super Saiyan powers. And finally, the adopted Darwin, who defied evolution and the very nature of their world by doing in less than a year what most fish dream of doing in billions of years. It's safe to say the Wattersons are some of the strongest people in Elmore.